I knew my husband was cheating, but I didn't know how far he would go until the night he took his mistress to a fancy restaurant, thinking I'd never find out. I could have confronted him at home, but I wanted him to feel the same shock he'd given me. So instead, I walked into that restaurant and watched his smile disappear the moment he saw who was standing beside me. Not just me, but her husband too. In that single moment, their entire secret world collapsed, and every lie they ever told came crashing down right at their dinner table. For weeks, something inside me whispered that something was wrong. My husband's excuses grew thinner, his late-night work calls became more frequent, and the distance between us felt heavier every day. I tried to ignore it at first, hoping it was just stress or a rough patch, but the signs were too obvious to dismiss. When I finally uncovered proof of his affair, the kind that punches the air out of your lungs, I didn't break down, I hardened. Instead of confronting him immediately, I waited. And when I discovered their dinner reservation, the perfect opportunity appeared. I reached out to the one person whose life was being shattered alongside mine, the mistress's husband. Together we walked into that restaurant with calm faces and burning truths. That night, everything they thought they were getting away with ended in a single devastating moment. It started so quietly that at first I didn't even notice the shift. My husband had always been busy, always juggling too many things at once, so when he started coming home late, I brushed it off as work stress. But then the excuses became repetitive, almost too rehearsed. Meeting ran long, client emergency, phone died. Each explanation felt thinner than the last, and his eyes never quite met mine when he said them. I tried to convince myself I was overthinking, but my gut refused to stay quiet. One night, he stepped outside to take a call. He never did that before. The conversation was hushed, soft, almost affectionate, and lasted far too long. When he came back in, he talked faster, acted jittery, as if he knew I could sense something off. That's when I began noticing his phone was suddenly always face down, notifications turned off, a new password added. He started taking longer showers, and sometimes I could hear him typing behind the locked bathroom door. I told myself I needed proof before I accused him of anything, so I watched, listened, observed. His shirt smelled like perfume that wasn't mine, something sweet and unfamiliar. He started dressing nicer on certain evenings, wearing cologne he barely touched before. I even found a receipt tucked deep inside his wallet. 2 meals, 1 expensive bottle of wine, 1 dessert shared between 2 people. But the most painful part? The date. The exact night he'd told me he was working late to cover for a sick colleague. I felt my heart splinter, but I swallowed it down. I needed the truth, not assumptions. So I checked his location history, something I had never done in our marriage, and that was when I found it. A marked location at a restaurant I knew he wouldn't be taking a colleague to. The pieces fell into place so sharply it hurt. But instead of confronting him, I held everything in, because something inside me whispered that the confrontation could be so much bigger if I waited for the right moment. And soon enough, that moment would arrive. The night I found undeniable proof felt like drowning in slow motion. His phone buzzed while he was in the shower, and a preview flashed on the screen before it locked again. Just 1 line, but enough to end any hope that I was wrong. "Can't wait to see you again tonight." My breath caught and my hands shook as I stared at the screen. When he came out, humming casually, a towel around his shoulders, I looked at him and saw a stranger. But I stayed silent. I needed more. Later, while he slept, I copied the number from his recent calls and messages. A quick search revealed her name and her social media profile. Her posts were filled with subtle hints, photos at restaurants, cryptic captions about forbidden love, and the same wine brand from his receipt. When I saw her tagged in a family picture smiling beside her husband, guilt twisted inside me. He didn't deserve this betrayal either. And suddenly, I wasn't just uncovering an affair. I was dragging another innocent person into the mess. The next day, I reached out to him. I didn't know what to expect, whether he would ignore me or lash out at me, thinking I was lying. But when he replied, the anger and heartbreak in his voice matched my own. He told me he had suspected something for months, but never had concrete proof. Hearing him speak the truth so honestly made everything more real. We decided to meet in person, to talk through everything we knew. When we compared details, the dates, the messages, the lies, it was like assembling a puzzle no one wanted to see completed. Then he revealed something that changed everything. He had access to her email reservation confirmations. And she had one scheduled for Friday night, a romantic dinner for two, at a restaurant known for anniversary celebrations and dim lighting, perfect for hiding an affair. That was when the idea formed, sharp and cold. Not revenge driven by rage, but justice wrapped in calm clarity. We didn't plan to scream or create a scene. We wanted truth, delivered with precision. So we made a decision. We would go to the restaurant together, and we would let them expose themselves. Friday night arrived heavy with tension, but also with an energy I couldn't describe. I dressed simply, nothing overly dramatic, nothing too casual. I wanted to look composed, strong, unbroken. The mistress's husband picked me up, and though the silence between us was thick, it wasn't uncomfortable. We were two people walking into a battlefield neither of us chose, but both of us deserved to witness. When we walked into the restaurant, the soft lighting and romantic atmosphere felt almost cruelly ironic. Couples laughed, clinked glasses, held hands across tables. But I wasn't there for any of them. The hostess smiled warmly and asked for our reservation. We didn't have one. Instead, we gave her the name on their reservation. She checked, unaware of the storm brewing right behind us, and told us their table wasn't ready yet. But they had arrived and were already seated at the bar. My heart pounded so loudly I could hear it in my ears. The hostess led us toward the dining area, and that's when I saw them. My husband, leaning close to her, whispering something that made her laugh softly. They looked like a couple in love, comfortable, connected, oblivious to the destruction behind them. We didn't walk to them. We walked past them, intentionally, close enough for them to see us. The moment my husband glanced up, time fractured. His face drained of colour, his smile froze, and the glass in his hand almost slipped. The mistress followed his gaze, and when she saw her husband standing beside me, she went rigid, her breath catching mid-laugh. The hostess, unaware, seated us at a table directly next to theirs, exactly where we wanted to be. The silence between the four of us was electrified, thick with exposed truths. I didn't yell. Neither did he. The mistress's husband leaned forward and said quietly, "Enjoying your dinner?" His voice was calm, almost polite, which made the moment even sharper. My husband tried to speak, but choked on excuses that sounded pathetic even to him. Every lie they planned to tell collapsed as easily as the house of cards they had built. And we hadn't even started talking yet. The confrontation didn't explode the way I once imagined. There were no shattered glasses, no shouting matches, no dramatic scenes like in movies. Instead, it unfolded with a cold, piercing stillness that made every word cut deeper. My husband opened his mouth to explain, but I held up my hand, not to silence him, but to let him feel that his excuses no longer had any space in my life. The mistress's husband stared at her with a mixture of heartbreak and disbelief, his voice trembling as he asked questions she couldn't answer without revealing her own web of lies. The waitress arrived to take our orders, unaware of the emotional war happening at the table. My husband tried to regain control of the situation, but each attempt only exposed more contradictions. At one point, the mistress tried to blame me, claiming I was overreacting, that things weren't serious. Her husband laughed bitterly and said, "Not serious? You planned a dinner like this?" His voice cracked, and she had nothing left to defend herself with. I spoke calmly, telling my husband I knew everything, every message, every lie, every secret dinner. I watched the weight of his guilt settle into his shoulders, but I didn't feel satisfaction. What I felt was release, a freedom from confusion, from doubt, from the emotional shadows he pushed me into. When the bill arrived, before any of us had eaten, I stood up. The mistress's husband stood with me. We didn't argue, we didn't negotiate, we simply left them sitting there, exposed, ashamed, and facing the consequences they created together. Outside the restaurant, the cool air felt like a cleansing breath. The mistress's husband thanked me, not because he was grateful for the pain, but because he finally had the truth. We exchanged a look, two strangers connected by betrayal, and then went our separate ways. When I walked into my home later that night, I wasn't the same person who had left. I wasn't broken, I was rebuilding, and though the future ahead was uncertain, one thing was crystal clear. I would never again let someone else write the story of my worth. I had reclaimed it, one truth at a time.